Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Mary Grace Show. I am Mary Grace, the voice of sanity to help you navigate politics, culture, wellness, faith, and world events. And today we are here with one of our favorite guests of all time. This is our friend Sam Faddis, also known as Sam the Spy. And you are joining us live for another episode of Spy Talk with Mary Grace and Sam. And I want to ask you, as we're waiting for people to come into the show, we'll see if we're actually showing up on our platforms. We are streaming on Rumble, X, Facebook, and YouTube. And so if you're following us on any of those platforms, we ask that you like, subscribe, share, post this to other places where you go and let people know that we're live. If you missed it, if you're watching on the replay and you don't know how you got here, please go to my website, marygracemedia.com, and get on the mailing list. And that way you're going to get an email before we go live and you won't miss these live shows. Again, it's marygracemedia.com. And we're going to get right into the conversation today. There's a lot to talk about and we don't want to mess around. We don't want to waste time. So Sam, there's some interesting things happening in DC and around the country. And you, before we jump into the conversation, we're getting new people every day. So give us just a quick background of who you are, what you've done, what you're currently doing, why we're listening to you, why we're asking you to talk about these things, because you have so much to bring to the table. Just give us a brief background.
That's a really good question. Why the heck would anybody care what Sam Faddis
They
says?
love you. Everybody loves you.
Well, look, I grew up in a military family. I went in the U.S. Army. I was a combat arms officer. I was also a JAG officer, which means an Army lawyer. That's a long story how that all shakes out for another time. I then practiced. Got out of the Army and I was an assistant attorney general out in the state of Washington for a while, which sounds like a really important job, but I can assure you that I was one of many assistant attorney generals who were very much disposable. But in any event, I then decided to completely change everything and join the Central Intelligence Agency, and I became
Just mixed it
an
up.
operations officer, a case officer, what normal human beings would call a spy, and I ran ops undercover for CIA for exactly 20 years, mostly in the South Asia and the Middle East. So like sort of everywhere from Southern Europe to, India, in and out of a lot of other places along the way. And then I spent about another decade after that working with other parts of the intelligence community. I basically built and then ran the training courses to train operators for virtually every other piece of the intelligence community, all the military counterintelligence guys, DIA, worked a lot with FBI, the guys that hauled nuclear weapons around the country, yada, yada, all those fun people. And then I don't know, what have I been doing for the last 5-6 years that you and I have known each other, in addition to all of that, continuing to be heavily involved in those kinds of things. Well, not working for the federal government anymore, but if
Consulting,
you will,
I guess, right?
opining mostly and criticizing a lot, I think is mostly what I do. Been heavily involved with the MAGA movement, the America First movement in the state of Pennsylvania, organizing, and of course, we put a huge amount of effort into the Trump campaign up here to make sure that Kamala Harris did not get past the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania very successfully.
Yes.
So that's kind of a weird combination of things there thrown together over a lifetime by this point.
Well, and you always bring so much wisdom and useful information to our talks, and we appreciate the time you give us. For those of you who are new to seeing Sam, you might recognize him if you are a frequent viewer of Bannon's War Room, because Sam frequently appears on the War Room. And so we feel very blessed and lucky to have him over here on our little show, on the Mary Grace Show. because we always have such good conversations. And when you first came on the show, can you believe it was 3 years ago that that you first was it 2022? Yeah, when the laptop came out and we talked about the laptop, and my first question was, why should we trust you? You're a spy.
Yeah.
And so because I had no idea,
It was not only an appropriate but a great question. I mean
Yeah.
that, and indicative, I hope, of the kind of conversations that I always want to have with you
Mhm.
and other folks that I judge worthy. Let's put it this way: worth my time to talk to, and that's not like a snotty, arrogant
Yeah,
statement. That's just like, if I'm going to talk to somebody, I'm going to talk to somebody who actually cares about the truth, and we're going to have a real conversation.
and
And
that's
you
what
can
we
be
do.
you could be on my side or against me, but as long as we're going to have a real conversation and talk facts, that's cool. And so let's get to the heart of the matter. Let's talk about it. You're a CIA guy, and why the heck should we be believing you? And I think my response was something to the effect of, you should not.
Yeah.
You should ask me questions, get my responses, do your own homework, and do what an American citizen is supposed to do. Reach your own judgment. As you've been to some of our political events up here. Typically, when I'm talking to the Pennsylvania Patriot Coalition across the state of Pennsylvania, one of the things I
Mhm.
say up front is, for the love of God, do not leave here and go home and say, Sam Faddis says this is true, so therefore it
Mhm.
must be the gospel. Go home and do what you're supposed to do as a citizen. Do your own homework
Yes.
and reach your own judgment. And if you actually decide that I'm full of crap and I don't know what I'm talking about, then God bless you, because at least you've done your job as a citizen and reached your own conclusions. Anyway,
Exactly, exactly, and one of the things that you brought to the table that day when we were talking about the laptop, and I think it's interesting to see how it's come full circle now, because now, everybody's admitting that it was real, which
right.
we knew all along, but I think that it's interesting, because you explained in detail how it would be impossible to fabricate that, because if people
Yes.
recall, we're talking about the Hunter Biden laptop, that, 51 so-called experts in
Right.
intelligence came out and said that it had all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation, and that was false, and so, of course, that's been debunked, and, but you went through and explained exactly, how that was. For anybody that wants to watch that, you can go back on my Rumble timeline. That was, March, I think it was March 20th or 22nd, 2022. So you can go back, and watch that, and it was fascinating. We talked for a long time, and that's how the Spy Talk, um, series came to be.
I'm
Um
glad you brought that up, and I apologize for interrupting you,
No,
because
it's okay.
to me it's indicative of what the conversation has been about all along. I don't mean just the conversation between you and I,
Mm,
but the conversation between you and I, or amongst a whole bunch of us over the last X number of years now, right? I mean, when Bannon and Maxey asked me to come to DC right after they got a copy of the laptop, they didn't ask me to come to Washington D.C. to say, we've decided we're going to use this thing to screw Joe Biden to the wall, and let's come figure out how to do that. Obviously, they were political opponents of Biden and thought that he was a disaster, which he was. But their immediate reaction was, we have this thing, and before we do anything with it, we want to know it's real and it's true and it's what we think it is. We are not going to run with this thing just because we can. We actually care about the truth.
yeah.
And that's exactly why they asked me to. And when I went down there, that, as arrived literally in the middle of the night in the townhome in Capitol Hill, and we're sitting up and I'm going through the thing. And very quickly, we don't need to, I know we don't need to revisit the whole conversation, but very quickly it's, look, man, there's no way in hell that anybody made this thing up. I
Mhm.
mean, I can talk to you now for the next hour about why, but I'm just telling
Yeah,
you, having
yeah.
run ops for a really long time, this is real. Maybe there's a email on here that's false. Even that's not as simple
Mhm.
as you think. but nobody fabricated this whole thing. This is Hunter Biden's laptop. And they were probably a little taken aback by the fact that I was willing to say that definitively. But I'm like, look, man, we don't need to bounce. We don't need to beat around the bush here.
Yeah.
It's obvious what the story is here. And as we, of course, we now know, it wasn't any question because the FBI already had the laptop and they had already contacted Apple because you back up your laptop to the cloud, and they already could validate it was Hunter's laptop, and that what was on the laptop was exactly what Apple had in the cloud. So from literally Jump Street, there was no actual question about whose laptop this was. And yet we were, of course, lied to.
Yes. And the media was instructed to lie. And people that I know who had really big accounts on social media had their accounts permanently removed. And it was very interesting because the story broke in October on Politico. And I think this is worth rehashing. I hadn't planned on doing it, but I think it's good to
I'm sorry,
do because it shows it's going to, I think it does tie in to what we're looking at today because the media is still at it.
Yes.
And now we're learning through the exposures from Doge why the media is doing what they're doing, and the fact that they are being funded and instructed by the government, by the intelligence community to do what they're doing. And sadly, it's taxpayer money that's paying for this.
Yes.
And so, my friend Dave, Praying Medic, who had his YouTube channel removed, I think he had almost 500,000 followers. I mean, he was monetizing. It was a big source of income for him and some of the other big influencers. It was very clear. Whoever made that call in the intelligence community to have those accounts taken down knew that it was essential to get the digital soldiers off of the playing field before that Politico story dropped, because they knew, whoever was behind getting those accounts suspended knew that people like Dave and other people who were in that influencer space, that they would have the story thoroughly researched and all of the details out within hours. And so the day that the Politico story dropped, Dave woke up to a suspended, completely nuked YouTube account. And that was no coincidence, right? And so now, fast forward, we're in 2025. So that was October 2020 that was happening, and it's become very clear, and it's actually on the record, on congressional record, that the laptop actually would have influenced people in the election. So what they did was election interference.
Absolutely. And look, the effort to shut people up was massive. I mean, you and I did what we could. Neither one of us pretends that we somehow were the key to anything. We were just one of a lot of people doing the right thing. But I left CIA as a senior officer, not because they forced me out, but because I made a decision without claiming that I somehow knew exactly where everything was headed. But essentially, I can't fix this place from inside, and I don't want to be part of this anymore. Yeah. So I know a lot of senior people that remain inside the organization and remained, if you will, on that side of the issues. Throughout this entire time period, I got contacted all the time by former senior colleagues saying basically, "What the heck are you doing, man? Why are you doing this? Why don't you get on board? What's the problem? Why don't you fall in line?" And
interesting.
Of course, if you actually are in the organization for the right reasons, you're supposed to be dedicated to the truth. That's what the whole thing is actually supposed to be about.
Right, right.
And power. So the idea that you would tailor what you say for political purposes is about as nauseating as you could possibly imagine if you truly believe in those ethics. My response is obviously, whatever, man.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep telling the truth. You guys do whatever you're going to do. But There was, look, that contact actually, strangely enough, has now ceased, but it went on for years that they were pinging both me and my wife. Why can't the two of you just get with the program, man? Why can't you just
Wow.
read from the song sheet and get on board? And we're like, I don't know. We have this thing about the truth.
I wonder do you know why they stopped contacting you?
Well, because temporarily they're keeping their heads down. That doesn't mean they went away, by the way, boys and girls.
Mm-hmm.
That when people in the Central Intelligence Agency shift into a more clandestine mode, that doesn't mean they quit. That means they're just working in a different way right now.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I'm under
And
no
yeah.
illusions they went away. They just have acknowledged that
Mhm.
temporarily there's no money to be made by pressuring us.
Right. And we talked about the deep insiders
Yes.
on the last show, and I encourage everybody to go back and watch that, because you gave one of the best explanations that I think out there about why Cash and Pam Bondi couldn't just walk in to
Right.
the agency and have everybody jump on board and
Right.
everything be hunky dory and arrests being made, and all of a sudden, the ship is righted.
Yeah.
That ship has been beached for a long, long time,
Yeah.
and the tide isn't quite up there,
Sure.
enough to right the ship. So it takes time, and I don't want to get too in the weeds on that, but I
I
do.
feel like I hijacked your whole show right now, Mary
No, you
Grace.
didn't. No, no,
I
I think
apologize.
no, this is good. I love
Okay.
it. I mean, everybody loves you. You could sit there and you could talk about, like, all the books behind you in your library one by one, and
I have
everybody
another
would
6. I
stay
have
on.
another 6 stacked up here next to the computer that
Yeah.
I'm working on.
Seriously, we could just go through your whole library.
I'm
We
switching
could
back and forth between one on Daniel Boone and one on the Great Wall of China. That's a
Oh my
little bit
goodness.
of a shift when I
Oh, I try to read. I'm reading a lot of historic fiction. Typically I like, like late 19th century, early 20th century Americana, and it just helps me relax,
Yeah, that's important.
So, yeah, because in between, I'm reading threads on Twitter about treason and things like that.
That's right.
So, so I'm like, let me just read a little, like a little Christian historic novel.
I'm all about it. When I turn on an old movie,
Yeah,
I don't want anything heavy, man. My whole life is heavy.
yeah, exactly.
I want escapism. Find me Indiana Jones. That's what I'll watch.
Right, right. It's like when I go to I go to the pool or I go out on my paddleboard, and, I'm like, no phones. No, don't call me. I don't want to be online. I'm not talking about this right now. I'm recharging. Um, so, so that's what we do. Somebody's saying, does he have one on Chief Tecumseh?
I
Probably.
don't. I mean, I know who Chief
Oh,
Tecumseh is, but I don't have a book on Tecumseh. And in regard to Homer and Hera, they're actually in the house right now. The old dog is sleeping in the corner here.
there's another dog, Artemis.
That's Artemis. There are actually 3 of them, and she's
Yes.
hiding in the office because the young pups have annoyed her today enough. She's like, I just want a nap. That's what she wants.
So I don't think I told you before we came on air. This is the break we're gonna have just before the commercial break. So
Okay.
we're going to light content. The other day I was downstairs and my dad had not one but 2 caregivers here because we were training somebody new. And all of a sudden I kept hearing a commotion upstairs in the middle of the house. And then all of a sudden my dad was calling me, Mary, Mary. He's got, mind you, he has 2 people up there to help him do whatever he's doing. So I'm thinking, okay, something happened. If he wouldn't be caught, like he knows I'm busy. And so I go up there and I go in the hallway, and there's all 3 of them are outside the bathroom, and they're looking in the bathroom. And I'm thinking, okay, something is amiss. And I walk up and there's a snake in the bathroom.
Oh, that's sad.
So, right. So Billy, our one of our orange cats, he brings us things. And you have to be really careful when you open the door because
Yep.
usually what he brings is alive.
Yes.
Right. So somehow we had a garden snake in the bathroom, and it was unfortunately on its way on the downward side.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And so, but everybody was kind of, they had found a plastic container and it was over top of the snake, but that's as far as they'd gotten. So, here I was with my big heavy gloves on and just a spatula. And that it's just never a dull moment, right?
Yeah.
Our animals, we love them, but Billy especially, you have to watch every time if he comes up to the door and he's got his head down a little bit, you're
I know that posture. Yes.
yeah, there's
You got to
something.
shake. You got to shake them down at the door.
Yeah,
Definitely for
yeah.
us. We're right here on the mountain. Outside is wilderness. So
Exactly. And
you're not coming
the
through.
other day,
Show me your paws. Show me your mouth, buddy.
exactly, exactly. And the other day he had a bird and I didn't get out the door fast enough. So the bird got in, the cat stayed out. But then I was like, wait, I was trying to do it the other way. I was trying
Yeah.
to get the cat in and the bird out, but it's always something with our
Yeah.
animals. And I think that bird survived, but I don't know. Anyway, so we're going to take a quick break and then we will come back in just a second. I'm going to take Sam off camera for just a minute. If I lose you, Sam, come back.
Sure.
And I'll share a couple of our commercials with you because this is a listener supported show. And as always, I want to remind people that we have some really great sponsors. One of our favorite sponsors here is griddownchowdown.com. This is our freeze dried American grown, American ranch beef. And this is a great product. It's freeze dried. And a lot of people use it as their everyday food. They don't, they don't want to worry about thawing things or remembering to go to the grocery store. This is a pound of ground beef. It's not jerky. It's freeze dried. You add water and you rehydrate it, and you can make whatever you make with regular beef. And every time you buy from them, you're supporting an American rancher. And as you know, that's critical because foreigners are buying up American farm and ranch land. And so when you go to griddownchowdown.com and use promo code Mary Grace, you are going to get a savings on that. And especially if you do a monthly subscription, you'll get extra bonuses when you do that. And so we encourage you to do that. The other thing I want to encourage everybody to do is to contact our friends over at Synapse Center for Health and Healing. We have had Dr. Troy on the show many times, and he's a functional medicine specialist. His entire team is focused on finding the root cause of what's going on with you and helping you to address it so that you can get solutions, not just prescriptions. And they work with people in all 50 states and multiple countries. They do a free consultation. It's a free discovery call. And then you can decide if you want to work with them. And the idea when you work with them is they don't want you to be on a lifetime subscription of getting pills. They actually want you to get to the root cause so that you can see changes and get your health under control and reclaim your vitality. And so if you go to officialsynapse.com, you will find a sign up page there. Just tell them that Mary Grace sent you and you will get a free consultation. And then you can decide. I've had a lot of people work with them. I've gotten great feedback, and they're going to help you find answers for things that maybe you've just been medicating for a long time, but you haven't actually gotten a solution. And that's officialsynapse.com. And that's it for our ads today. Oh, one more thing. I do want to tell you, our friend Praying Medic has a new book out, and a lot of his books are on Audible, and we do have an Audible free trial through this channel. And you can go to that link right there on the screen and you can get a 30-day free trial. You can try any book that's on audio with your Audible free trial. And if you follow that link, you're going to get to that free trial. It's a really good deal. I'll drop it in the comments as well so everybody can take advantage of that. So we're going to come back here to the content. As we're coming back, remember to go to my website, marygracemedia.com, and sign up for the email list so that you never miss a show, marygracemedia.com. Also, if you forgot what I just talked about and you don't know who the sponsors are, they're all right there on my website, marygracemedia.com. And here we're going to bring Sam back on and we're going to talk about, I think we're going to talk about the judicial coup, because that is an issue that is on everybody's mind. And so we go from talking about our pets, talking about the judicial coup. Let me get this off the screen. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is we're seeing, first of all, President Trump was elected by the majority of this country, the popular vote and the Electoral College. And he was given a mandate, much of which was to restore rule of law and to get our country back, to get the illegal aliens out of our country, the invaders that were brought over the border by uh, Biden. And so here we are. Every time we turn around, there's a judge somewhere in some obscure district court in the United States that's blocking, that's issuing an injunction against President Trump. The latest one yesterday is that there is a judge who is blocking Trump from removing the protected status of tens of thousands of Haitians who were brought into this country as so-called asylum seekers by Joe Biden. And if listeners recall, just before the election, this was a big story broke in Springfield, Ohio. They're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. If you recall that, it became a meme. Well, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about people who are wholly uncivilized, who are being dropped in by the thousands into small communities and completely overwhelming all of the infrastructure and the services. And now a judge somewhere in the country is saying that Trump is not allowed to apply rule of law, his own executive powers to removing these protections. Sam, what is going on here? What is going on? How are these judges doing this, and how can it be stopped?
Yeah, well, I think this is an incredibly important issue, right? Not to go off on some tangent about obscure aspects of political theory, because in addition to being a lawyer, which is a skeleton in my closet, I actually have my bachelor's degree is actually in political science. So God knows I've spent more than my share of time in this. But in any event, look, we have a form of government. I don't want to get lost in the question of whether people want to use the term democracy or republic or the exact mechanisms, right? But the point is, our whole government is based on the idea that power derives from the people,
Yeah.
right? That's now we can talk then about the fact that we obviously have a constitutional republic, so we are not an absolute democracy. We have limits on that. We have all kinds of mechanisms. It's an indirect democracy. We elect representatives as opposed to all of us getting together in the town square and voting, yada yada. But the point is, the people rule. It is the power of the people. A congressman, a senator, or a president, none of these people have authority because they belong to a royal family where they claim they're talking to God, like a pharaoh or a sultan. I mean, hopefully they are talking to God, assuming we're talking about the God we think we're talking about. But in any event, the point is power comes from the people. And that is why anybody has any authority in the House of Representatives, the Senate, or in the White House.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you think about it, the judiciary, the third branch of government in the federal government, and obviously there is judiciary at the state level, the county level, is the most undemocratic form of piece of this apparatus, and particularly at the federal level where they are not elected and where they are appointed for life. So they're a federal judge sitting on the bench, other than the fact that he was appointed by somebody, was in no sense chosen by the people, given the authority by the people. It's essentially kind of like a little king or queen sitting on a throne wearing a black robe who gets to issue edicts. Now, the reason
Tyrant.
we accept that, Yeah, well, the reason we accepted that, or it was accepted initially at least, is because there are severe limitations on that person's authority. That person cannot create law. That person cannot do what Congress can
Mhm.
do, issue all they can do is apply the existing law and apply the Constitution. So that ship obviously sailed a long time ago
Yeah.
with federal judges claiming that's all they were doing, but clearly winking into
Mhm.
existence laws. They just legislating from the bench
Right.
is the term you
Yeah.
usually hear. So again, if you think about that and the implications of that, it's the exact antithesis of the idea that power comes from the people. The fact that this one guy or gal can just snap their fingers and issue an
Mhm.
edict and claim that it's because they read something in the Constitution nobody ever read in hundreds of years, but they saw it and issue a rule. So we've been treading down that road for a long time. And now we have this particular mechanism, which are these nationwide injunctions that are issued by the federal judiciary. We're not talking the Supreme Court or even a court of appeals. We're talking down to district court judges, of which there are quite a few around. And these guys and gals now have taken unto themselves the power to issue an injunction. Well, ordering the federal government not to do things, the
Mhm.
whole federal government. And actually, in some cases, even though they're still calling it an injunction, which means don't do this, they're affirmatively ordering the federal
Right.
government to
Right.
do things. So, like back, whatever, X number of weeks ago, there was this case where this guy was being flown to Central America,
Yes.
and the judge issued an order, and then according to the terms of the order, ordered the plane to turn around
Mhm.
in mid-flight and return to the United States. So that's not a don't do it thing. That's an affirmative
Yeah.
order. Any event, it's a constitutional crisis and it's growing. And it clearly is motivated by district court judges that are acting on political
Yeah.
bases.
Obviously, yeah.
They oppose Donald Trump and the MAGA movement and the America First movement. They oppose his policies. And so they're just purporting individual district court judges who theoretically are supposed to be hearing criminal cases and civil lawsuits are now saying they have the authority to tell the president of the United States what he can do and he can't do. Where do I think it's headed? I think it's headed to a true constitutional crisis. And I think sooner or later we have to confront the idea, stop looking at it as on a case by case basis. At some point, we have to say a district court judge does not have the authority to
Yeah.
do this at
Yeah.
all, period, full stop. You little district court judge, cannot issue an order to the president of the United States
Mhm.
commanding the entire federal government. We do not have a whole bunch of little presidents. And excuse me, how we
Mhm.
get there, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm afraid for these things to go to the Supreme Court because they're compromised too, you know? And so it's like, there was a point at which I think maybe we thought that was gonna be helpful to have the Supreme Court weigh in on issues,
Yes.
but obviously that's not that's not helping us. And the thing that I want to emphasize here as well is that on the one hand, you know, when it comes to these types of things, there's the tendency as a partisan to want to say things like I just said, well, that's not going to help us. But the bigger picture here is rule of law. And this is
Yeah.
what President Trump is committed to. And that's why when people are screaming and demanding arrest, we want to see arrests. Well, and there are people who are saying by by this time, in 2021, there were X hundred J6ers already arrested. Well, I'm sorry, we cannot make that the measuring stick because
Right.
that was actually color of law. There were no they didn't have cases to arrest these people. There wasn't even time to bring a case, to bring a grand jury. This was political persecution. And so as constitutional freedom-loving Americans who love the rule of law, the last measuring stick we should be using for what we expect from President Trump and his administration right now should be what happened in J6. It is not apples to apples. We do not want uh, President Trump's political enemies to be paraded through the streets and put out as examples
That's
of
right.
what we can do now that we have power, because that's how communism works. We don't want that. Do we want justice? Absolutely. Do we want what I would call rough justice? In our heart of hearts, we might, but for people who love freedom and the Constitution, that's actually what we don't want. We want to put a stop to what's been happening over these last many years. And so, President Trump wants very much to return this country to the rule of law. And so
Yeah.
there are things that he can do. And I think if anything, what we're seeing from these judges is that it's highlighting the corruption. It's highlighting the tyranny that
Mhm.
has run rampant. And so if we continue to apply their standard, um, then we're going to go backwards as a nation. We're going to lose our country. What do you think?
Yeah. Look, amen. Look, I've said this to you before, I'm sure. I think sometimes you hear people make these parallels to what happened to the Roman Republic and how they lost their republic and became an empire
Yeah.
ruled by a single man. And sometimes those are stretched too far. Okay. But not always. And there are some really strong
Mhm.
parallels here. I mean, the Romans got into a cycle with opposing parties, if you will. And gradually, over the course of many years, they stopped paying attention to their rules and their traditions. And I mean, in many cases, for them, it wasn't so much there was a
Mhm.
written law as there was a tradition. In other words, they had always respected this,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
there had been, it amounts to the same
Mhm.
thing. And piece by piece by piece, it became do whatever it takes to hold power and destroy your enemy.
Yeah.
And so both sides, to simplify it, just step by step by step, just they kept going down the same road. There gradually were no limits, and it just
Mhm.
became
Yeah. Yeah.
win at all cost. And eventually we began to see things like significant political leaders beaten to death in the Senate in broad
Yeah.
daylight. That became they went from this very this tradition of popular rule that had gone on for centuries to what amounted to just it's like the law of the
Mhm.
jungle. So
Yeah.
amen to everything you
Yeah.
just said,
Yeah.
right? You can't respond to the lawlessness of the other side by saying, now we
Yeah.
hold power. Let's just run riot over them the same way. Not if you actually are trying to save the republic. That's not the answer. So, I've said that kind of thing many times. I
Mhm. Sure.
haven't changed my mind. I do think that we legally are going to have to confront
Yes.
these judges. And I not in so much of an individual case by case basis, but go directly to this idea. Does a district court judge have the authority? Forget about the specific case. Does he even have the authority to issue an
Mhm.
order telling the president of the United States what he
Right.
can and
Right.
cannot do? To issue a nationwide injunction? My position would be no. And that ultimately you're going to have to get to
Mhm.
there. Now, keep in mind, by the way, everybody defaults to the Supreme Court, and that's important. The judiciary all the Constitution says is effectively, there shall be such courts as Congress creates.
Mm,
So what that means is Congress has immense authority to legislate and limit or expand the scope of the courts, eliminate courts entirely. They're not these. So it is not that Congress and the president can't do anything about this. They could, for instance, why can't we pass a law that says explicitly district court judges
right,
don't have the right to
right,
issue
right.
nationwide injunctions against the
Well,
president?
and now well, we know we know why, because of who's in Congress, and
Well,
what
there you go.
I mean, talk about absolute total disappointment. I mean, right now
Yes.
we're in a situation where the same judge who uh, is mounting a judicial coup, Boasberg, against Trump, could be in a position of choosing and appointing the attorney,
Yep.
the attorney for the District of Columbia, who is now the
Yep.
acting attorney is Ed, is it Ed Martin? Is that his name? Um, and the Senate, the Republicans in Senate are opposing his appointment, which is like insane. I may have his name wrong, but he's been the acting U.S. attorney.
Yep. Look, you're dead on, right? I mean, anybody who thinks that that just because you got an R next to your name and you're
Yeah,
sitting in Congress that you're aligned with Donald Trump has not been paying attention to the show,
yeah,
guys. That's not what's happening here. Half the problem are people who claim to be in the president's same party board with him. But man, as soon as he leaves town and they get off the stage, they take off the MAGA hats
yeah.
and they go right back to doing what they've always been doing.
Exactly, and so this is a big deal. It
Yeah.
really is a big deal, and one last question, and then we're gonna have to go. It's been a
Okay.
time has flown here. Habeas corpus. So we're looking at getting these illegals out of the country, and now the left is demanding due process
Yep.
for all
That's
of
right.
these people, that each
That's
one
right.
of them
They
has
didn't care
their
about it before, but now they
right,
care.
their day in court. And other administrations have done mass deportations, including Obama, Clinton, and others, without a peep from the Democrats. And suddenly, because Trump is doing it, because he's under a mandate to do that, to keep our country safe. That's his number one role as the commander in chief. Uh, all of a sudden, the idea of deporting people without spending 2 to 3 years on a trial for each one of these people is anathema. Not to mention, they would probably have a public defender, so we would actually have to pay for it.
Yes.
Um,
You 100% you'll have to pay for it.
yeah, and now there's a proposal. I don't know if you saw the self-deportation bonus,
Yes.
$1,000 will fly you out, and people are saying, "We shouldn't reward them." I'm like, "No, no, no, you don't understand. Economically, this is the best option, because if you give somebody $1,000 to leave the country and sign, that they're not coming back, and you pay for them to leave, now they're in a database, and you can track them if they do come back. That's the best option, because if you keep them here, not only are you paying for their defense, you're having to pay to deport to arrest them, deport them, take them through the system, and you're also paying for their children and all of their health care and them to be on welfare.
Much
I
cheaper
mean,
for them to go home.
yeah, we're talking into the millions of dollars per person, potentially, if,
Here's one of the big problems.
sorry, I was asking about habeas corpus, and I went
That's okay. Well, I mean, two things. One, without getting lost in a whole lot of legal mumbo jumbo that nobody gives a damn about, excuse me. Part of the problem is that the Biden administration was effectively a co-conspirator in all of this illegal immigration. So a
yes.
certain number of these folks snuck across the border. Nobody ever caught them, and they've been hiding in Chicago. But overwhelmingly, they came across the border, turned themselves into legal authority, Border Patrol. They were handed a legal piece of paper by the federal government that said you have a hearing date set for some mythical time in the future.
Yeah.
And then they were sent on their way. And so go to Chicago and in 10 years show up for a hearing. Sure, that we
Yeah.
know this is nonsense. But the point is, they did turn themselves in. They were legally given this piece of paper under the authority of the federal government. Do I think, and I'm going to say this, I mean this metaphorically, NSA, they should be shot for doing that, the people who did that. Okay, again, figure of speech, guys. The point is, I have no sympathy for that. I'm not excusing it. It doesn't change the fact that it happened. So now you got this illegal floating around in Chicago. Do I consider he's illegal? Yes. Should we all? Yeah. But the point is, we actually, as a government, gave him this notice of hearing, saying he can stay until his hearing.
Right.
So as repulsive as that fact is, you can't rewind the tape and go back because Joe Biden and his scumbags did that.
Yeah.
So that's part of the legal problem, is now every one of these guys that you grab in Chicago who has one of those things, if he hasn't committed a criminal offense or if in effect violated the terms of his parole, to speak very now you got to figure out legally, how are we going to get around that? We told this guy, we, the United States government, said, you can go to Chicago and hang out for 5 years until you're here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's
now we want to throw him. Now we want to throw him out. Habeas corpus means basically the judge produced the body is what it means. And
yes.
And it's, it's this idea that you can grab people in the court. You're talking about suspending the writ of habeas corpus, which means the courts can't compel you to produce the person, which means the federal government in effect has the authority to grab you and do what they will with you, and the courts don't have the authority to intervene.
Yes.
Does part of me think we should do that because God knows we should be able to throw millions of people out of the country who shouldn't have ever been here? Yeah. It's back to that same question. Once we suspend the writ of habeas corpus and the federal government is grabbing the people that you don't think they should be able to grab, are you still going to be as psyched about the fact that the courts can't compel your, for instance, like you protested in the Capitol and they threw you in a hole? Anyway.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, hopefully that made sense. I tried to plow through that at 1,000 miles an hour.
The ethical dilemma that we face with this is real. And the question, the problem I think that we have here is that there are those of us who look at these things from an ethical standpoint, and then there are those of us who look at these things from a communist standpoint. And they don't meet. There's no in between. And so that, I think, is really the big problem that we're facing here. The motive behind what the left is demanding, it's not a pure motive. It is 100% subversive.
Let's be honest. What we are dealing with, the actions of the Biden administration, I use that as shorthand because we all know Uncle Joe wasn't running anything.
Yeah.
The actions of that regime were revolutionary.
Yeah.
They have this was not a difference of opinion over minor matters of policy. These are people who actively were working to destroy the republic, destroy our social, economic, and political system. It's a revolution. And it is horrifying. You touched on this briefly earlier, that so many people, including in the Republican Party, sat by and watched.
Yeah.
While they did all these extreme things.
Well, and I think, one of the things about President Trump is that he's been sounding the alarm about this for quite some time, because it was Obama who promised that he would fundamentally change our nation.
Yep.
And, what we just witnessed over the past 4 years was a third term of Obama. And it is a continuation of what is known as the 16-year plan to destroy America. You can find that there's a PDF explaining the infographic of just exactly how that was meant to play out. And it started with Obama, and then it was supposed to continue with Hillary Clinton. And then, they had a break in between with Trump in office, and then they picked right up. and at an accelerated pace under Biden. And anybody who hasn't seen that, I do encourage you to check it out. It's very eye-opening. Um, and there's a PDF out there floating around that you can find. The 16-year plan to destroy America. That's what we're seeing, and that's what I mean. They're holding on for dear life to try to continue on that path, even with Trump in office. And the reason that people are so manic about stopping him is because I think they see the writing on the wall. People with nothing left to lose are just going to go balls to the wall, and that's what we're seeing with these people. This is a zero-sum game. There is no second place. And I've talked about this a lot over the years, and that's what you're seeing play out right now. The fact that you have judges intervening to stop Trump from advancing the people's mandate is it's a much bigger story that's playing out than just the fact that one little judge somewhere is corrupt. They're taking their marching orders, and I think they're going to be sorry, but here we are. So unfortunately, we got to go. We have to sign off. Sam, how can everybody follow you and get more of your brilliance? And then when are you coming back?
Well, I will be back as soon as you ask me back.
Okay.
As always.
It's usually my fault that we're
no, it's nobody's fault. It's that we're
Yeah.
both really, really busy.
Yeah.
Mary Grace has about a million things going on, folks. So
Yeah.
it's not like she's sitting around and just, eating bonbons, thinking about when she's going to do her next show. The best place for people to find me is to start with the magazine that my wife and I run online, And Magazine, which andmagazine.substack.com. Myself, she writes for it a number of, actually largely other former intelligence folks who are of the like mind and still fighting for truth, justice,
Yeah.
in the American way. And that will take you to every place else we are online that we haven't been thrown off of yet.
And Magazine. And just to say something, when Sam says my wife, that's like an understatement, because her accomplishments are beyond what we can list right now on this show. And I will say that we have repeated requests for Mrs. Sam the Spy to come on the show.
So just so you know that she's not just like dodging you in particular.
Yeah.
She's got a stack of such requests.
Yeah.
She's still maybe more in spy mode and prefers to operate.
I
behind the
know.
scenes. But
I'm just gonna
Mrs.
say
Faddis
again.
is, for those that don't know, also a retired operations officer,
Yeah.
which means she did all the same stuff that I did. She did it better, and she looked better doing it. But if you've never seen a white lady who grew up in a working class neighborhood in coal country, Pennsylvania, speaking fluent Arabic, wearing a full abaya, running a meeting where she's got a terrorist source taking direction from her, providing intelligence, and in the process,
Yeah.
I would add, saving a whole heck of a lot of American lives. There's a lot of American servicemen and women who don't even realize today that they are alive because Gina produced the intelligence that allowed us to shut down terrorist attacks before they ever got off the ground at great personal risk.
Yeah. And we are grateful for her. And I'm just going to say the Gina and Mary show would be off the chart.
Yes, it would be off the chart. Yes.
So,
okay, so I'll admit it. I'm just peeping the two of you apart. No, I'm not. That's not true at all.
No, but I know she has requests, but when she's ready, she knows that the invitation is always here. Tell her to name the time, name the place.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Appreciate it.
and there, like I said, we have many requests that come through on my comments, on Facebook, everywhere. Not hardly a week goes by that somebody doesn't say, "Hey, can we get Mrs. Faddis?" So, yep, people the demand is there. Okay, and so Sam is at andmagazine.substack.com. I also have a Substack. It's marygracemedia.substack.com. That's a blog platform that also has podcast and video. Anybody can start one. So if you like
Yep.
to write long comments, go over to Substack and start a blog.
It's actually a really great. It's a really great platform. It makes it
Yeah,
very easy
yeah,
to do it. Very
and
user friendly.
and it's basically I haven't been censored on there,
I've
so
never been censored. I've never had an issue with content.
yeah, so it's a really good place to go, substack.com. You can start your own thing. And a reminder, go to marygracemedia.com and get on the mailing list so that you can see when we are going to be live again. You get emails from me right over there. And please remember to support our sponsors. I keep forgetting My Pillow. Let me just give Mike a shout out before we go, because he is one of our favorites, and that is going to be mypillow.com, promo code Mary Grace. All the things you need right now for graduations, weddings, birthdays, anything you need. It's going to be right there at mypillow.com, promo code Mary Grace. It's not just sheets and towels, but certainly that's the best place to start. Please support that amazing patriot who has put everything on the line. The best thing about My Pillow too is when you call them, you get real Americans in America who answer the phone, and it's just awesome. And so he's providing American jobs right here in our country, and they talk to you like a regular human being. You're not put on hold for an hour. It's just fantastic. So mypillow.com, promo code Mary Grace. Please support them and buy all the things. So I think that's it. And we will be back for the next episode of Spy Talk, hopefully very soon. Everybody have a great day. Thanks again, Sam Faddis, for being here with us. We